All right, I'd like to welcome to the process of hip hop, all the way from Susan, originally from Susan City, California, my man Marlo Eugene. What's going on, bro?
Shalom, brother. How you doing, man?
Hey, man, we
Shalom.
doing good, man. We
Good.
joined by my boy, executive producer Dale Harewood. He ain't always with us on. He's always with us on the show, but today he's actually in the flesh. And like I said, we
Yes,
we
indeed.
here definitely wanting to chop it up with my man. And with this being the process of hip hop, we definitely want to dive into the process behind Marlo, you and your music, man. And I wanted to start with, man, because you just had me tripping. I wanted to start with some of your lyrics, man. And
Okay.
so I'm gonna read you some of these lyrics here, man. I want you to kind of dissect because this had me tripping. This is off of Concerto, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So you said, now I think I know what they mean when they say win-win. I'm 86 and all in betweens
Well,
and what
that's
they're
of men.
sent with.
That's of men. That's not concerto. That's of men.
That's of men.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's on. Oh, okay, of men lyrics. My bad.
Yeah. No, it's
So
all good, King.
let me say that. Let me read this again. Now I think I know what they mean when they say win-win. I'm 86 and all in betweens and what they're sent. Maybe it's the songs and the beats that I'm content with. That's why I leave them all on repeat
And let the pen
and let the
drip.
pen drip.
Ooh.
Yo,
Mm-hmm.
take me inside that, man. Cause I played that about three times over. I think what it was, I was listening to Concerto, then I switched over to this one. So I had my song titles mixed up. But man, take me inside that,
Oh
man, in
man.
terms of
Well, you
lyrically.
guys, you guys are, what I'm saying, much more, probably much more involved as far as a knowledge of just the variety of different ways that artists go about working on different songs and things that work, things that don't work. I can't tell you how many times I've sat down and said, I want to make this type of song or I want to come off this type of way, but it never really works out, man. It's a spiritual process, you know what I'm saying? And it took a while for me to be able to accept that because there's a part of your subconscious that kind of takes over. Yeah. And then a song like Of Men, and that commercially, that's been my best song, like as far as like just as far as sales is concerned, because I've had to re-upload that song a couple of times for a variety of different reasons. But um I remember when I sat down to work on that song, um, it took a while for those lyrics to come out of me because I didn't just let them flow out of me.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying? And sometimes it's weird because people want this like how would you say, this like great grandmaster explanation of like how the song came together and whatnot. But for someone like me, like I sit around and I just think a lot about different things, in a song like Of Men, I all my pain and grief that I had experienced in the previous years prior to making that song, it was just very appropriate. The beat was made. It was, like I said, it was no grandmaster plan. I was sitting down, I made that beat. And then when I sat down to work on that song, I remember sitting at my kitchen desk, or my kitchen table rather. And I just had different images of different experiences with different people in the song. Like before you get to those bars, I think I said something like, I thought I could listen to friends. 30 minutes after that, I was pitching a tent. I'm thinking about legitimate, like real life scenarios without saying people's names in the song.
Mm-hmm.
With that particular stanza, uh, that those bars that you quoted, it represents me recognizing that the people that I look to for the answers didn't have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Um, I had to 86 a lot of the things that people gave me as credos, as things that people told me like philosophies I ought to live by. I had to get rid of them. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? And then search within. And then I started making some of the best music I've ever made in my life. And I've just been on that journey ever since. But it came with, as I said in that stanza, really me 86 and just a lot of the platitudes and the nonsense that I had people tell me that I should live by. A lot of them came from other rap songs. You know what I'm saying? Like uh I was under the impression that I had to fit within a particular mold in
Mm.
order to be appreciated in hip hop. Like you said, I'm from Sassoon. we were hyper influenced by the hyphy movement and stuff like that. There weren't too many artists around me making songs like Of Men, unfortunately. Although you know, they do exist. But it's that type of narrative. It was the people around me telling me that I needed to be more like that. Those were the individuals I was speaking to in those particular bars, you might say.
When
Wow.
and what was interesting, because that's why I wanted to see when we talking about all the in betweens. You said I'm 86, and those influences, whether they were good, bad, or indifferent, there was people and influences that you basically had to filter out of your life in order to be the artist that you are.
Right.
And I think that's a pretty, I think that's pretty common process for anyone who is trying to be at an elite level in their industry,
I
because it's
appreciate
like
that.
if you're listening to this person, this person, this person, it's almost like it's hard to make progress because you have too many voices in your head versus figuring out, listen, what's gonna be the best path for me to take. In this case, we're talking about hip hop, but
Hmm.
what's going to be the best path for me to take?
Right.
You
Right.
also said something interesting, man, and I definitely wanted to get to that. In that, being from, especially the West Coast,
Hmm.
whatever region you are from. So, and me and Dale have talked about this many times. If you're from Northern California, you're automatically linked, no matter what. You can be from
Exactly.
Eureka. You're automatically linked to the Bay.
Right.
And
Especially when you leave the state. If you got family
yes,
outside of the state and they know you're in the music or they know that you're somehow involved in the record industry, they automatically assume that like you know E40 and Snoop Dogg in the game and
Right.
stuff like that, one way or the other.
Right.
yeah, and but sonically also, you're almost expected to sound
Absolutely.
like them. So,
Absolutely.
your sound definitely is West Coast, but it's West Coast more in the vein of a, again, a Far Side, kind of a little bit of a Souls of Mischief. I hear a little bit of that too, where it's not quite the typical West Coast that we've become accustomed to, especially those outside of California, like you said, Snoop Dogg, Game, Ice Cube. It's like if you don't sound like them, then it's like you're not really West Coast. But the West Coast has a variety of sounds, and so when I listened to you, I definitely heard unique, but I definitely heard some other artists that we've also thought about that kind of have broken the mold from
Mm,
what the West Coast is supposed to sound like.
word. Word.
Is that something that, again, in kind of elaborate on that in terms of your fan base, who you're trying to reach? Is that something that you do intentionally?
Well, see, yeah, see, it goes either way, right? Sometimes you sit down and you try to do things intentionally like that. I'm sure that this is probably a lot more prominent if you are actually signed. But when you're independent, you kind of have that luxury of doing guessing tests, right? Um, in high school, I mean, not just musically, but just in general, you find yourself trying to fit in. You're trying to fit into some type of mold so that you can be accepted. Yeah, and in high school, me and a group of friends, we formed a rap group, and we were trying to be like the Diplomats, right? We were trying to be Dipset mixed with G Unit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And by the time you graduate, though, I remember, like for instance, in high school when we would put out mixtapes, I would get people responding to certain songs that we would do that I wouldn't expect them to respond to, and it was typically the songs where I was being a bit more introspective. So when I left high school and started actually trying to do music professionally, I had that kind of circulating in my mind, right? So by the time you get to like Of Men, yeah, you still have people in the barbershop that say everything that you said, you know what I'm saying, with regards to the expectation, like, yeah, you raw Marlo, bro, but you need to get more like this. Hey, bud, hey, play that. See that messy Marv right there, Marlo. You got to get on beats like this. You sound too East Coast. You feel me? Like, I heard a lot of that. Word is bond. Like, I heard a lot of that. And I try
That was
to,
pretty good, man.
hey, it is, that's how you know it happened. Now, that's
Yeah,
how I'm able to do it
exactly.
so well. But like, to be honest with you, I've always tried to find that balance because I don't want to completely disregard everything that anybody tells me because I don't have it all figured out. So I did the best I could to try to merge those two worlds, the world within me and the world that everybody expected. But then there's just times where it just doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? I have to be me. And it it was frustrating, man, especially when you're like trying to do shows and stuff like that. You know, when you're doing open mics and then you get discovered by somebody and stuff like that, even just on that level of having a manager, everybody's trying to like change you to be something that is more familiar to the audience. And when you're in this area where everybody's listening to Bay Area music, yeah, it's your nuances and your idiosyncrasies aren't necessarily appreciated. You know what I'm saying? It's so weird how that happens because the people that started liking me, like I said, for the introspection. But then it's like, okay, now that I'm here, you want to change me. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
That's the
Weird.
biggest trick, if you will, in the industry. And I
Wow.
some of the things that you've said relative to being an independent man, that to me is the power, because maintaining independent, a lot of times, to your point, artists get signed for their individuality and for their unique approach, but then they ultimately, once they're part of that big machine, it's very rare that you find someone who wants to set the trend.
Mm,
There's a lot of trend followers in the industry, and I'm finding that to be the case. Even some of the individual or independent artists are kind of leaning into that a little bit too. And I'm like, hey, one of the things that I loved about hip hop, especially in the onset of it, once you got past like the party raps and all that stuff, was just folks being who they were,
mm,
take it or leave it, and that attitude was like winsome.
word.
And that's what I see. That's what we love. I mean, Brian, whenever an artist is who they want to be. They're not trying to be anybody else. And you would know that the doesn't mean that you don't have influences from other people.
Right.
But when you have your style and you bet on yourself, you're like, hey, I'm doing me. I don't know
Hmm.
any other way. Those are the artists that we like. Is there anybody else like Buster? What if somebody told, no, you need to be more like Q-Tip? No, we want Bust to be Bust, and you know what I mean? So,
Well,
man,
that's the give and take with creativity. I mean, creativity by definition. I mean, when you look at the etymology of the word, it denotes novelty, right? Literally not being like everything else,
right.
right? But that's the problem though, because society in general, their society is not very accepting of novel ideas. I mean, just look at how society in general was towards hip hop, right? I like looking back at the archives, it doesn't really seem like the world truly accepted hip hop until the 90s, like not on a grand scale. You know what I'm saying?
True.
And so I would say on a more micro level, that happens regionally. You know what I'm saying? But I've always kind of I've always kind of relied on the idea that principally good quality is always going to outshine ideology. It's always going to outshine marketing. It's always going to outshine just the superficiality of perspective. And so when you focus on that, right, then you got to start asking yourself, okay, well, how do I make good quality music? Because I listened to some of my old stuff around that era where I told you, like, I would go to the barbershops and my barber Randy, he was so cool, bro. Like like he would get my music, and he probably, out of everyone that I had in my life that I listened to with regards to how I ought to hone my craft, people who weren't musically inclined at all, he was one of the few people I would say that actually gave me good objective advice, because I remember hearing things like, oh, well, you need to be more hyphy. That's the sound right now. You know what I'm saying? Um, but Randy was telling me, he was like, listen, sometimes it's just in your presentation. Like, you can be you. There's nothing wrong with rapping on a Bay Area type beat, but be Marlo on the Bay Area type beat.
Mm-hmm.
You
mm,
feel me?
yeah,
And when I
Mm-hmm.
heard that perspective, I was like, "Ooh, okay, I'm gonna try that out." And that's when I really started to find my zone, because I'm gonna keep it lit. Like, Bay Area beats go hard. Like, even I
Yeah.
yeah,
like listening to that stuff. Now I don't listen to it necessarily for like lyrical influence,
Mm-hmm.
but when I got Fruity Loops open and I want to, sometimes my beats sound like that. I don't trash those beats. The goal though, and like Randy told me, is like, find out how to be Marlo on that type of beat. You ain't got to rap about the things that they rap about because you don't live that life. But figure out how you can integrate yourself into that. And so that was some amazing advice, and I've been applying that to this day.
Awesome.
in terms of your craft, you said something interesting, though, man. In terms of getting to a point in the process of mastering your craft as an MC. So if you kind of think of what goes into being an MC, it's always lyrical content
Hmm.
and delivery, and then that third part is the production value. So it's almost like when you have when those three things seem to come together, you get a masterpiece. If you think, like, if you take Illmatic, for example, you had lyrical content, you had delivery, that Nas, and then you had just an all-star team of producers who we didn't really know at the time they were
Right.
as good as they were. Tip and Large Professor and Premier and all. So
DJ Premier, oh my God, bro.
yeah, I
Like,
mean,
Yeah.
so
I
but
love
it's
DJ
like,
Premier's beats, yo.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, exactly. It was like, I mean, I think I lost my mind the first time I heard Illmatic, because it was that dope. But in terms of you as an MC, you're responsible for two of those, and then you have production that you either work with, or you're talking about doing it yourself. How important is that aspect to you and your music, man? Like, in terms of, yeah, I want to sound this certain way. I like these beats, I like these tracks, but it also has to mesh with who I am as an artist. So what is your process in terms of working with producers, finding beats, getting the tracks that you want? What is that process like?
Ooh, well, this is gonna be an interesting answer because I haven't rapped on someone else's beat in probably um since 2009, since about 2008, 2009. I was tired of spending money on beats. I was cashing out, like, because I'm not one of those type of artists that can lease a beat. If I rap on a beat, like, it's like a relationship, bro. We can't share this beat. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And this was when SoundClick. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the
Yep.
website SoundClick. Okay, were producers at that time. They were selling their beats for around like $200-300 exclusive rights. And like I said, I was graduating. I graduated high school in '05, so I put out like a little album around 2006, 2007, and every paycheck I was buying like an exclusive beat just to avoid just going through the dilemma of hearing somebody else on that beat. And back then, I was following Randy's advice. Back then, I couldn't make beats, so I really didn't have any other option. You see what I'm saying? But uh, as I was experiencing this, like, I was actively trying to get better at making beats and experimenting. Every now and then I would rap on one of my own beats, you know what I'm saying, when it sounded decent enough. But it took me a long time to actually get good enough to where I could make a whole project, a whole mixtape with nothing but my beats, first off. Now, as far as the process of making beats, oftentimes it's just like you just get in the mood to do it. You don't necessarily have, like I said, a grandmaster plan. You just get in front of the keys and see what happens. Or sometimes, every now and then, it would be all planned out, but very rarely. Like I said, Of Men was not planned. Concerto was not planned. Concerto, I went to the library. I got some orchestra CD, took that off, sampled it, threw some drums on it, and rapped to it. Like, I honestly didn't think that anybody would like Of Men. I didn't think anybody would like Concerto. It's such an organic process that, like, um it's just, I don't know, it's just amazing. Like I said, it's a spiritual process. Music is something spiritual, and you just got to be you got to be able to you got to be fluid enough to be able to see these things come. It's almost like a matador with a bull, you know what I'm saying? Like, you just move out of the way and just let the process happen, kind of deal.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
at this point now, though, when I get in front of Fruity Loops, I'm a little bit more in control. Like, I could say, like, I want to make a boom bap East Coast type beat. I want to make a Bay Area type beat. I can try, you know what I'm saying? I'm a little bit better at it, but it's always gonna have that Marlo element to it, to where I can't make a Rick Ross beat exactly like, I can't make a Dr. Dre beat exactly like Dr. Dre. If I tried to and I let my friends listen to it, they'd be like, yeah, but it still sounds like a Marlo beat. That's a good thing though. You see what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
Because it stays unique. So, like, I'm in a good pocket.
Yeah. Do you feel the need? I'm sorry, but do you feel the need when you're creating your beats to focus yourself in a particular direction, or are you most comfortable when you just say, hey, whatever I'm feeling today, that's what it is, and we're just gonna
Right.
rock with that?
The latter, definitely the
Okay.
latter. Um, like I said, very rarely do I set out with a everything all laid out in an itinerary. Now, the next album that I'm gonna put together is it's themed, right? So there's no song on this next album that I'm gonna work on where you will be dancing or anything like that, because it's extremely introspective, it's extremely deep, it's extremely vulnerable. And so what I'll do for that, like what I did for Melancholy, the album that I'm working on, is if I've made like 100 beats, I'll go through all of them and I'll see if, okay, this one goes with the theme. I really like this beat and I already have something that I want to put on it, but it doesn't fit the theme of the project that I want to work on and put out. So, as far as like my projects and beat selection and stuff like that, that's how that process works for me, you know.
Okay.
Do you
Dope.
see yourself though? I mean, so you are making your own beats. Do you
Mhm.
see yourself though in the future? I mean, especially if again, some of the best musical collaborations are born out of relationships, but whether it's friendships or what have you. Do you see yourself though in the future, kind of maintaining kind of your I'll just say um, control over your production as far as what you sound, or could you see yourself working with specific producers if that opportunity arose?
I never say never, but I've become extremely OCD now, and I think that's it's a double edged sword. On the one end, I saved a lot of money by not having to go to other people for their beats. I'm able to, my beats and my tonal quality, I have full control, right? Um, the downside to that is not becoming too monotonous, right? Like an album with nothing but Dr. Dre beats, it might be cool all the time, though. You know what I'm saying? I'm not sure that the consumer, I just feel like that would backfire. So I'm always open to collaborating with other producers. To what degree though, we'll have to see. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would love to collaborate with another producer and say something like, all right, well, you work on the synths and the drums, and I'm gonna play around with this sample, and then let's see if we can't put the two together. That would be easier for me rather than me showing up to the studio and just letting the producer make something for me and then me write to it. That'll be hard for me to kind of get back into that groove.
Do you have any requirements, like in terms of, because you said something earlier that it's a spiritual process. So
Mhm.
how important is it for the, if you collaborate with anybody, how important is it that you all are on the same uh on the same wavelength, if you will, or
Um,
what is that like?
well, for me, how can I put this as diplomatically as possible? Um, check this out, right? So I went to Gordo's yesterday to get a burrito. I didn't ask the dude what he believes in. You know what I'm saying? Like people are masters of their craft. I'd work with an atheist, I'd work with a Buddhist, right? You know what I'm saying? We might have some interesting conversations after the song is done, you know what I'm saying? And we're sitting there, you know, just talking about life. But as far as the process of the music, the only way I could see like let's say someone doesn't hold the same ideological views or philosophical frameworks that I hold about life. Like let's say someone is like a staunch leftist and they like loathe everything that I believe in, but they're like raw when it comes to producing. To the degree that it can just be as neutral as it would be as me going into Gordo's and buying that burrito, it's not a
Mm,
problem. You see what I'm saying?
right.
But like let's say like I come in the studio and you flipped a gospel sample or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And it's almost like it's satire and you're making fun of like my God or something like that. Obviously, that's not something I can get down with. I can't get like, let's say you had a beat prepared with a hook already on it, and in the hook you're saying something that I couldn't rock with. No, I can't do that. And to that degree, I can't collaborate with other rappers whose
Hmm.
lyrics run diametrically opposed to the things that
Gotcha.
I stand for. That's me. And I feel like it would be a contradiction if I did do that. But as far as we can keep things in the neutral column,
Right.
I'm open to dealing with anybody. You know what I'm saying?
Word. Dope.
Go ahead, D.
No, I was good. I was like that. That was interesting because I've experienced it on both ends, and I won't name names, but I'll label it hyper spiritualism, where folks were like, I just can't work with that person
Mhm.
because they're not a believer, or however they wanted to label it. And it was like, but coming from the paradigm that you've professed, it may have been an opportunity to change that. if they got to experience you. I
I
don't
feel
know.
you.
You know what I
I
mean?
feel
It
you.
wasn't that because this person wasn't necessarily writing lyrics. They were just doing music.
Word.
And so, and I see it from both ends. I mean, I've heard it, expressed to where it's like, hey, I don't know what's on them when they're doing or where they are in their life when they're doing what they're doing, but there's a certain energy that comes with that. They didn't use the
That's the
term
tricky
energy,
part.
but you know
That
what I
that's
mean?
that's the tricky part. You know what I'm saying? And that's where everybody has to use their own discretion. You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? Because I mean, heck, I could easily work with a Christian rapper and get that same vibe. You know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
my discretion is gonna have to be the same no matter who I'm working with. Yeah, there's brothers I love to death. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes to music, yeah,
Hmm.
like there's just a different cap you got to put on. You know what I'm saying? And you have to be as objective as possible.
Yeah.
Um, my main goal when I do music, right? Like I read a lot of philosophy before I like went kind of like head first into the Judeo-Christian ethic as hard as I've gone into it. And you start to see a lot of what would you call them substrates in the background where people all over the world are recognizing the same things, right? Like that, and that's why I said good quality is always going to it's
Hmm.
always going to shine through ideology. Like
Right.
let's just talk about the 90s for 1 second and we'll go on to the next question. Yeah. Um, I don't care who you are. I don't care how righteous you try to act like you are, right? If I ask you who your top five is, chances
Yeah.
are at least two or three of them are coming from the 90s era hip hop. Those rappers were not rapping gospel albums. Pac might have had a couple songs about God. Biggie might have said
All
a couple.
five are coming from the 90s.
All
Thank you. Thank you.
five.
But what I'm saying is like that type of quality, it shines through. It just shines
Right.
through all barriers, and it's disingenuous for people to try to act like it's not because of the talent. You see what I'm
Right.
saying?